today we're talking with Bud Rozell, who is the owner of Good Home Inspections in the Dallas area. Bud, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The tip of the hat. So you're the first one who's
Yeah.
done it. Okay, so we're starting with everybody.
All right.
Favorite, quirkiest thing about Dallas, Fort Worth area that you won't find in other cities?
Well, that would have to be, by definition, because everybody's got a waterfall. Everybody's got the crazy house. Everybody's got these things. So, with it you can't find. And that unequivocally has to be the Texas State Fair.
Oh, okay.
It has to be the Texas. It's the size, it's the largest, it's the oldest, it's the grounds, it's the park, it's the architecture, it's the history of the parades, the concerts, fireworks display, which is kind of unique in that it's not a Disney fireworks display, but it's kind of like a multi-medium display over ponds. And, it's not a hidden gem because a lot of people go to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be, I would think that would be, and I say quirk, it'd be, I'm taking that as unique.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. It was
I would have to
the last person I talked to said the toilet seat museum in the Colony.
There's a cockroach museum over in Richardson.
No, is it really?
Oh. But all you got to do is go online and get that, and you can get that state fair on that too. But how can the cockroach museum compare to the state fair?
True. True.
Yeah,
maybe just in a different category.
Right. So you go on to the weirdest places in your neighborhood on Google, and you got an answer.
Right. Okay, so did you grow up in Texas, or if not, where?
Okay, well, I'm fifth or sixth generation Texas on my grandmother's side. Okay, her maiden name was Robertson, and her mother's maiden name was Bell. It's in Robertson County, Bell County, and I have relatives, and their names are engraved on the Hall of State building walls.
Oh wow!
So I'm about as Texas as you can get.
Yeah, so you're truly born and raised then.
I was truly born and raised.
So where do you live now?
I live in East Dallas. East Dallas. I've lived over here for about 35 years. I've always lived in Dallas County. For better or worse, I've never spent more than 3 consecutive months, 90 consecutive days outside of Texas. But you got to remember that Texas, it's just as easy for me to travel to Chicago as it is to El Paso. So Texas is a lot bigger than people can visualize.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I shouldn't travel more, because I should.
Right, but it's a lot bigger than I think what we, especially for me in PA, like we're just kind of like an average size state. And then when you start looking at Texas, I was like, oh God, there could be like 8 Pennsylvanias inside of Texas alone.
There's going to be 8 Pennsylvanias and Maryland too. You put them all both in there.
Right.
The whole 9 yards.
So then in your area, what is the housing market like right now? And from a home inspector's point of view?
Okay. Well, from right now, it's a little slow because the business of real estate is seasonal. Mm-hmm. And we've got our political climate, and which also includes the Corona thing and all that. But right now, it's slow. But last year, I had a very successful year, really bang up. And I expect this year to be the same thing. So right now, this month, it's slow, but I expect it to.
Right.
And but I also expect next month to be super busy. And I'm not being optimistic about that. It's just what's going to happen.
Right. It's the flow of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then where you live, we're asking everybody this because I used to write about like local areas in each city that we go to and talk about, but it's hard with the virus. I don't know who's open, who's closed, who's doing takeout, who's not. So favorite place near you to eat or coffee or place to go other than the Texas State Fair when we can do all that fun stuff again.
No repeat answers. Okay, I get it. All right. Well, the Dallas Grilled Cheese Company, okay, it has a great takeout, and they're opening up, and I've done neither. I'm pretty stringent about I can't wait to get back there. They make this great comfort food. These aren't grilled cheese sandwiches. These are gourmet sandwiches. These are
Oh,
above it. I mean, it's like one of the Petite magazine or something.
right. Like the fancy cheese.
Right, right. It's definitely fancy cheese and everything that goes along with it, with libations, craft beers, yada yada yada. I also like Campese. Campese, they used to call it the Egyptian, but it's actually an old school Italian.
Oh, okay.
And again, I'd like to get back to that.
Right.
So,
Place to go.
well, for coffee, there's always the White Rock Coffee and Tea on Northwest Highway by the lake. It's like 6 doors down from Starbucks, but no, this is local,
Right.
and it's better. I mean, it really is better.
Right.
And so I mean, everybody got a choice, but and when
Yeah.
things open up, I'd really like to. I really miss half price books.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you might have a half price books there, but
Mhm.
the Starship is in East Dallas. The
Oh, I didn't know that.
first one, the mothership, excuse me, but it's in East Dallas.
I did not know that.
Right. So it's like the Disney World of half price books.
I'll have to tell my son because we were kind of in like a lockdown for a while, and I'm like, I was buying like books, and I'm like, oh, like he reads fast. I'm like, what am I going to do with these? I don't even think they're open right now. I got to figure out how to trade these in for something else.
I think they're open. It's just that I choose, to play it safer.
Right. Okay. So what made you want to get into the inspection industry?
Well, that was pretty easy for me. Everybody has transferable skills, so that's only helped me get there. But we bought a house. And we needed an inspection, and I went through that, and it was kind of like an eye opener for me. I said, oh, I can do this better. And so, and part of me is that it's a very exciting time in my life, and I wanted to continue that excitement. So the process never stopped. I kept buying houses or the process. That's waned, a little bit, as you would expect. That's waned some, but my enthusiasm for the process for inspecting my involvement in my industry is probably stronger than ever.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, you started the exact same way that Jessie Tate, the inspector I talked to in Pittsburgh. So she had an inspection done, and she's like, I could have done this. She's like, in fact, I want to do it. And then,
right.
Yeah, and so went through all the licensing, did through all the testing, joined ASHI, and started her own company. I'm like, it's amazing. Like, it's funny what makes you think to just go for it. Like what sparks you at the most random time to pivot your whole career.
And part of it hinges on external forces as well. I mean, you have what we see as the moment, but where are you at professionally in your job? Where are you at? So a lot of us have glass ceilings, that kind of thing, and we see like we can, we get to, for better or worse, again, you hear that a few times, but you get paid what you're worth.
Right.
So you're not asking somebody for a raise or vacation, glass ceiling, promotion that just never shows up, and then you see an opportunity that you can take those transferable skills and go like, I can do that.
Right. And how many years have you been doing inspections?
Ever? How many years?
Forever.
1996. I've been doing this for 25 years.
Wow. Oh, okay. So this is the perfect next question for you then. Most common issues you find in Dallas homes, and what are big deal common issues, and which ones just sound like they're a big deal, but they're really not? Like for us in Pennsylvania, we have, Jessie said almost every home has some sort of like rodent or mouse or something, especially in the wintertime. And she's like, it's just happening. Like you can't necessarily always avoid it. I mean, it can get overwhelming and be a big problem, but she's like, I bet almost every home has some kind of creepy crawly something in your house. So what about in Dallas? Big deals,
Well,
not
and
big deals.
okay, because it's geographical,
Mhm.
and so we're on expansive clay soils, especially in North Texas, and so it's foundations. We have hail, so it's roof coverings,
Mhm.
and we're semi-tropical, so it's termites.
Mm.
And so now a home inspector license is not a pest control license. I have that, but not all home inspectors have that. But the three big things, as far as dollars, big ticket items, and those are the three big things that are universal through all of our construction, because different periods of construction have different issues.
Mhm.
So then we got into subcategories. So we got, aged out drain systems, and then we moved into aluminum wiring, move over to Federal Pacific breaker boxes, move over, so, but the three biggies are, and as far as this conversation is concerned, the two biggies would be foundations and roofs.
And are there any that aren't, what's the most common that isn't a big deal? Are there any that do you see a lot
Oh,
of? That
how many? What's important to my client is what's
Right.
important, of course. But we do not have a self-closer on the door between the garage and the living space. Okay, that's a fire hazard. I mean, I can walk right on in. Um, as far as repairing, and would I repair it? I say probably, because I'm a hypocrite. But repairing that doesn't cost much. Plumbing's important. You got a loose commode. Well, that's important. That could cause you, but fixing that doesn't cost much. So there's a myriad of things you're buying. In most cases, not always, but in most cases, the housing stock that's being traded is existing. So it comes with a certain amount of history, and a certain amount of abuse, and a certain amount of wear and tear. But there's take your pick.
Right.
Some people can live with, some people can't.
Right. And I'm sure there's many of those little things that add up as you go along.
I inspected a condo yesterday, and I had 175 items.
Wow.
A little 1,500 square foot condo.
Wow. 175.
Now, how many of those were important? That's a different question.
Right. But you still need to know, it's right. Important to know, or to hold on to that inspection and later go through and be like, here's some things I could probably knock off my list at some point that I know need to get done, but it's not the end of the world if I wait and procrastinate.
I've had clients that have, I've warms my heart to learn that I've had clients that do exactly that. So we kept your report. We worked on it a little bit at a time as we went. When we sold our house 6 years later, it was so smooth and beautiful, and it's just rainbows and butterflies and unicorns.
It's just magical. The magical home.
It was just magical.
So then when you're looking at finding a home inspector, what do you think are the most important questions to ask, or what specific things should you be looking for?
Well, first, to find the inspector, I would go, and I say this with all my heart, I would go to the ASHI website, go to find an inspector. And if you're in Texas, especially North Texas, then the Texas chapter, we have that as well. And I would do that. Eventually, you're going to end up on the internet. I would take everything I would use critical thinking when I'm reading reviews, whether they're good reviews or bad reviews. I would look at the websites, and I would say, does this look like an antidepressant commercial, or am I getting real information and am I learning about the person that's actually going to do the work for me? It doesn't keep you from interviewing them. You should. But again, the questions in your mind. We're in Texas. It's interviews for Texas. And in Texas, all home inspectors are required to be licensed. We got to inspect the same things. Not necessarily the same way. In Texas, we all have to have insurance. So that question is really, I ask how much, because they're only required to have 100,000. Some of us, including myself, choose to carry more for our business. But interviewing your inspector to get to your question, specifically, I would ask them, how many inspections do you do with it? Okay, if you do 3 inspections a day, you're a successful home inspector. I've done that. You're successful. But what does that mean to me? Is this, am I the middle inspection? And did he worry to come over? Did he leave somebody else? I don't care. But is he going to leave me to go to talk to somebody else? He's got to shut the inspection down because he's over budgeting himself. If an inspector could do, for example, 2 a day, I choose 1. If I do 1 a day, that's the only house I care about. It's the house you care about that day. It's all about that. Mm-hmm. And so I think asking how many inspections they do a day would be important to me. And, would someone doing 2 a day, stop me from using them? Probably not. I'd be happier if they were doing 1, but probably not. If someone's doing 3, like I used to do, I wouldn't be real thrilled about that.
Right.
Real thrilled about the attention that was on that.
Right. And then when we look at key inspections of the home, the roof, the outside, the attic, I was going to say basement, but we already talked about this. There aren't many basements, if any, there. Electrical, plumbing, and pest. Which ones needed a specific certification for? Or pool? That's what I wanted to say. Not a basement, but a pool.
A pool, yeah, we have a lot of those here. Okay, well that's ASHI is the only home inspection association that's certified by a third party. So certifications, but even inside of ASHI, the little certifications, you can just start a certifications, and so you can self-certify yourself. And at least if somebody's certified, they know, that they went to a class. But you could go online to the Texas Real Estate Commission and find out if your inspector has ever been reprimanded and what kind of education he's been taking. Has he been taking the minimum amount? Or has he been taking a lot of swimming pool classes because you're buying a swimming pool? Has he been taking a lot of deck classes because you're buying a deck? Has he been taking these kinds of classes? So, I would be interested in what kind of education the inspector had, because I know I'm privy to all that. Mm-hmm. You have to be licensed to inspect for termites. You get in trouble. You have to be licensed, I believe, to do mold remediations.
Okay.
If it's something very technical like that, a certification would give me, a septic tank. There's not a lot in Dallas, North Dallas, where I'm at, so I don't bother offer that service. But if somebody was certified to look at septic tanks outside of what Texas Real Estate Commission says, I would be. Swimming pools, I'm not aware. I'm sure there are, but I'm not aware of any really good certification classes for swimming pools.
Right. I think that the termite one's definitely important. And then for, I know we keep talking about ASHI, but can you let everyone know what that stands for? And I thoroughly believe in ASHI, and Jesse Tate in Pittsburgh is the one that turned me on to it, to just find a good starting point when you're looking for your inspector.
And back on certifications, the International Code Council is good. They're very good.
What is it? The International
Code Council, ICC, is very good.
Oh, okay.
But to answer your question, I hate to jump around. I apologize. Okay, but ASHI certified inspectors, they're the only true third-party inspectors in the industry. It's the American Society of Home Inspectors, and they're certified. Where am I at? By the National Commission of Certifying Agencies. ASHI's been around since I think 1974. They're the oldest and most trusted. Now, all associations, it doesn't matter. You can have your quilt association, for that matter. But associations, by definition, they're about marketing, or in a lot of cases, they're also about political influence, because we're all affected by politics and band together. The few good associations, they're also about consumer advocacy. and Ashy is about consumer advocacy.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to say they're not about marketing because
Right. Everybody has
it's
to, you have to,
right,
you can't put a
right.
sign outside and just hope someone starts calling you. I wish it
And,
were that
and,
easy, but
and Ashy, and this is one for me in my business, but we actually have a representation in Washington. We have a lobbyist. We have a lobbyist in Washington. So Ashy's actually, some associations are all about marketing. But then Ashy, with that lobbyist in Washington, we're lobbying for the consumer.
mm-hmm.
We're lobbying for the consumer. So Ashy is consumer advocacy. And
Right.
that's one of the several reasons. And I won't get into all of the, I belong to every one of the associations. I belong to them more than once. I'm an opportunist. They got something I need. So I'm right. I'm not a snob about this, but I've belonged to Ashy since 2005. It's the only one that I belong to continuously. Ashy is
right.
And so Ashy they have an elected board. And again, American Society of Home Inspectors, you can go to ashi.org and find your home inspector. And anyway.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, I wanted to make sure. I don't know if I had that down originally to talk about it, but I know that it's such an easier way to find a home inspector and to cut out of all the extra searching you have. It's like a good place to start rather than Googling home inspectors in Dallas. It cuts out a lot of the people you probably don't need to talk to.
And that's true.
Right.
And that is true. And I can assure you that you're not the only one that feels that way.
Right. And so then looking at, on our platform, you can post your home up to a year in advance. So those considering selling within the next year, what tips do you have for them on maintenance and things they could do now that would help them when they're ready to sell? Things to check or things to prepare.
Right. Well, in a year in advance, it's kind of difficult. And even fixing things when you're selling a house. Remember this: I'm licensed to inspect. I'm not licensed to practice real estate. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at this from either a consumer's position or a home inspector's position. But I'm not a realtor. But what I see a lot is people fix their houses up to sell them to somebody else. And if you could get ahead of that curve, you could get things at today's cost, enjoy them and live in them and sell the house, and the stuff isn't that old. You don't have to give whatever, but you don't have to sell the buyers a brand new air conditioner, brand new roof, brand new windows, brand new all this stuff. You fix the house up for somebody else when you could have been fixing it up for yourself and living in it. Right. And so, but we're in a time frame right now. We've got about a year to go. So decisions have already been made. Business models already been laid out. And so what do I do now? And especially if you got some deferred maintenance and some things, you declutter and clean. Mm-hmm. Declutter and clean the yard, declutter and clean the house, declutter and clean. Because if you're going to put, for example, a new air conditioner in the house, well, maybe the new buyers would rather take that same money and appropriate it towards the sales price. The buyers can have a choice in how efficient the air conditioning system is they want. They can make a choice what style windows to put into the house, for example. Mm-hmm. And they can have, maybe you need to talk to somebody else, so a home inspector, and see, how you negotiate the deal. You could spend, $1,000 fixing up something that the buyer doesn't care about. Right. You wouldn't have even changed the price. Right. And then now you've crippled yourself because there's a certain amount of emotion, involvement, money, time. You put all these things into this that's not going to mean anything to the seller.
They didn't care.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
So,
and I get nervous too when I see some people, because I follow a lot of real estate forums and listen to what people, or read what people post and write. And some of them are talking about like major issues in a home, and they're like, we asked them to fix this. And I'm like, oh, sometimes you have to ask, like, should you have asked for money instead? Because, are they going to find the right people to fix it? Are they, like you want to trust and hope that everyone finds and hires the right person, but when you're talking about that much money, it's kind of nerve wracking. Like, who are you going to hire to fix this? And what is it going to look like? So you're right. Like, how much money do you put into it when you're not really sure what's important to the buyer, if they would rather have the
Right.
control over fixing it.
If you got a house that's just ugly, and I
Mhm.
don't know whose house that is, I don't. That's fine. But, okay, well, if they don't fall in love with the house, they're not going to buy it anyway. Is it like your husband? I mean, he dressed up really nice in the first date and stuff.
Right,
After you fell in love with him, I know you did. You got kids.
right.
So after you fell in love with him, well, then you started making, allowances. Well, it's kind of, the way he does his socks on the floor.
Yeah.
You start learning how they are. Well, same thing with the house. If you don't fall in love with the house, after you fall in love with the house, then you start making allowances for it. Oh yeah, that door is, it's like your husband's socks. That door is, it's okay. It's still a good house. He's still a good guy,
Right.
So and it just kind of works like that. So if you want to sell your house, declutter and clean and make it nice. Let's say you got some ratty blinds or something and you're not going to fix them. Then take them out. Don't leave them up there.
Right.
Take them out so that people can see what they visually and mentally they can put what they want in the windows instead of if you got something there that's a distraction, then they can't visualize the house.
Right. Makes sense. Totally. And then do you see anything like a common deferred maintenance that drives you crazy when you inspect homes because it's so easy to do, but nobody does it? Is there anything that you are baffled by that people don't do? And I'm throwing you this curveball question, but I was just thinking of it.
When I'm thinking about this, one, I appreciate people's deferred maintenance. If everybody did what they're supposed to, I wouldn't have a job. But what just baffles me is, why don't you change your air filters? Why don't you change your air filters? Because I'm going around and if I see soot around the air register, well then I know that the coils are dirty, and then I know that the coils are dirty because they didn't change their air filters. So everything is it's the same thing as maintaining your car. It's the same thing as maintaining your body. It's maintenance has been proven. Preventative maintenance is cost effective. So, yeah. But what drives me crazy personally in my business is, again, clutter. I mean, you look at I'm all about clutter. You can only imagine what it looks like on the other side of the screen because I pushed everything over there to talk to you. Okay. So, but a home inspector can't get in to do his job. He can't get in there to do his job. He can't get in there to inspect it. He can't get in there to open it up. And then, so now the inspection report's going to be limited. Okay. Now the scope becomes more narrow. Now the client, the buyer, wants to know more about the house. They can't find out about the house. And so, I'm kind of answering your question, but yeah, a house that's inaccessible and cannot be inspected, and the buyer cannot get enough information to feel comfortable to make the decision. I see that as a problem, just like air filters. Right.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was talking with Lorraine Brock, who does organizing and staging and stuff. And we spent so much time today talking about getting rid of stuff. She's like, just touch everything in your house, pick it up and say like, do I want this? Yes or no? And get rid of it. Like every single item. She's like, just touch it and look at it and get rid of it if you don't need it. Because we've all got way too much stuff to begin with.
We do, but I'm not getting rid of it. Donna and I, my wife, we have this fight. I'm getting rid of all this iron. She's the one that collects it. It's her iron. I'm like, no, that we're going to make lamps out of that. We're going to, just wait for me to retire. I should retire already.
No, we're the same. My husband loves to purge. He calls it the purge over the holiday season, where he goes through like all the rooms and anything we don't need, like we donate or get rid of. It's every holiday, every Christmas, and I like don't look forward to it every year because I'm like, I'll still use that. Leave that there. And he's like, you haven't touched it in a year. I'm like, well, I might use it. So you can tell who's the minimalist in our house. It's not me.
Right. It's a psychological battle that we accumulate, and we develop that, at some point in our lives for some reasons. And but it's not uncommon. Right. So, but it would be, the hypocrite but it would be clutter is probably the number one.
Right.
Don asked me, how was the day? And I goes, it was horrible, man. I had trails. I had to go through the house on trails.
Yeah.
I know that, I'm talking about a very small part of the population, but to some degree, we all suffer.
Right.
It's
Some way more than others, though.
Right. And we don't have basements here. We talked about that.
Right.
It's our garages.
So do you all just park outside? I just can't fathom no basement.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what I would do with everything.
Right. Well, we've got a 2-car garage, and since I drive for work, I have to maintain appearances.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the newer car, and it has my tools in it, so it's more vulnerable. And so it fits in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And then Donna's car, which used to be my car, but it sits out in the driveway the whole time.
Right.
Hailstorms and all.
Oh, I was going to say, at least you don't have snow, but I think I'd rather take snow over a hailstorm any day. I think it's less damage.
Less damage, but not near. See, snow stays around.
True. I guess I'm just used to it.
Hail comes in and goes out. Tornado comes in and goes out.
So, I'll take snow of a tornado any day. I can't do the tornadoes. Especially if I don't have a basement. That's a no-go for me. Like my husband's always like, I'd love to move to like Knoxville or like somewhere down there. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere unless it's got a basement and a safe place for me to go if there's ever a tornado. I've never been in one. I don't ever want to be, but that is my fear. I don't know why.
Right.
I could do without it. So is there anything else you think we missed or you want to mention?
Let's see the maintenance tips and people. Well, we were talking about pros and cons of pre-listing.
Oh, right. Yes.
Oh, okay. So, earlier, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. The pros is that you know what you got, and you know how the buyer's inspector is going to see your house. Okay, that's an education in of itself, and you can plan and budget accordingly. And it'll likely give the buyer a certain amount of peace of mind that will help them move forward with the sale. There's lots of good reasons, and I do them. I don't do a lot of them, but I do them. There's lots of good reasons to get them. But the cons is that you're now charged with knowledge. So if you didn't know you had a broken rafter in your attic, now you know you have them. If the buyer's inspector hadn't seen that broken rafter, then you could have sold the house. Everybody has a little bit of larceny in their heart. You could have sold the house honestly not knowing you had the broken rafter and it wasn't caught in inspection.
Right.
But now that broken rafter has been brought to everybody's attention, so you're charged with knowledge. Now you can either discount the house like we were talking about earlier, or you can have it fixed. Problem fixing mechanical things like that is nobody falls in love with that. Nobody falls in love with it. They fall in love with the paint, fall in love with the carpet. But you can fix it and go forward. You know it's not going to come up on the inspection. Right. And then it doesn't matter how you plan, what you fix. It doesn't matter. The next inspector is going to see something else. And so you need to budget yourself for that, both emotionally. You just bought a home inspection. You just did all these repairs based on that home inspection. Now you find some more stuff. It's going to be frustrating emotionally. You need to budget for that, and then financially as well. But
so you just hope that the buyer has a less wonderful inspector than you had for the pre-listing inspection, I guess.
I don't know how to answer that.
Everyone should get the best home inspector. I don't want to hire somebody good. Everybody good.
I do to toot my own horn, but I've seen a lot of disappointed people who have bought. If you're going to get a pre-listing inspection, get the best one you can. Because the last thing you want is a home inspector coming behind your home inspector and shredding it. So you might want to think about that.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you and learning about why you don't have a basement and all the fun facts that you shared with me. Someday I'll wrap my head around it. We're excited to have you. And then I've been asking everybody, if someone does have a question, do you prefer email, text, or phone call? Which is the fastest for you?
It's the fastest for me is text. Okay. Yeah, I do. You know, I like to talk. You figured that out early.
Me too.
All
So I'm
right.
like, our interview is going to go on forever.
It can. Wait a minute, I got some other notes up here. Okay. Um, but the email, you know, I'm not really not going to commit much to writing unless it's in an email as opposed to a text.
Mhm.
But my replies are going to be a little longer, lower, you know, later. I'm going to have to budget some time to compose. So you're welcome to call me. You're welcome to text me, and you're welcome to email me.
Great.
Especially now, this is you and I, but you know, if somebody's talking about their house, we might need an evening phone call. Maybe not during business hours, but an evening phone call. I'd be glad. Like we're talking now, you can only imagine. I'll talk you through it. Whoever you are, I'll talk you through it. I'll tell you what the deal is. And then email as well works pretty good. So, but immediate, quick answer, Bud, when can we talk? Okay, well, that would be a text. Bud, when you know, I say email me, I'll get back to you before Saturday. There's a reason why we have all three.
Right. Something for everybody, and something for how much time you have, I guess.